tutorial for kit number 7. I'm Lina Skvagersson and I'm excited to be your guide as you learn new skills while we make this beautiful stitch sampler afghan. Stripes 19, 20 and 21 are full of new techniques. I think you're really going to enjoy working through these with me. In the first stripe of this kit, we are going to learn how to organize your single, double and treble crochet stitches in a fancy lace texture. And then we have a 4-row stripe with cute pebble stitches all over. And then in stripe 21, we will learn a new cool technique which will let us create a trendy graphic colorwork texture. These are going to add fun texture and visual interest to our growing collection of stripes. Before we begin crocheting, let's review the materials included in the kit and items that you will need to have on hand. In this shipment, you have received the yarn for stripes 19, 20 and 21. You have got color cream, Harbor and Cappuccino. You will also need some remnants of the Seafoam and Spa from previous stripes. You got a brand new instruction leaflet, you have your eye hook, you have your stitch markers and the yarn needle, and also remember to keep your stitch guide handy. You will also need your scissors and your tape measure. Are you ready to begin stripe number 19? Let's get started. Working in larger lace designs is a great way to add texture and visual interest just by working the basic stitches in different places. And counting is the key. Join me as we begin with stripe number 19. Up next in our next stripe, we have this beautiful lace texture. It's all going to be following the pattern, and we're going to work treble crochets and chain spaces, and I'm going to guide you all through it. I'm ready to start working my stripe. I will be working with the cream color. So first of all, we're going to join it in the first stitch. So go through the stitch and bring up your cream colored yarn. Now for this first row, we're just going to work single crochet in each of the 135 single crochets across. So we start with the chain 1. And then for this stripe, I'm thinking that I'm going to work around these tails to remind you of the different options we have. So we're going to work a single into the first one. So for this now, since I have these stripes, I'm going to work, or these tails, I'm going to work around them by lining them up in front of me since I am on the wrong side. And I'm just going to work my first single around them. So as I say here now, I'm going to hold these here in front of me as I work a single in each stitch across. So single into each stitch, and this is just an option to work around these tails so you don't have to weave them in later. It's optional. We're also going to work an edge on the afghan, and we could hide some of the tails when we're working the edge, but I just want to show the different options we have. You could work around these two tails for a couple of the stitches, and then usually after 5 or 6 or so, I feel like we have enough, and I can just cut those off here before I continue. And then I'm just going to continue working a single crochet in each of the remaining stitches across. So work your single crochets, and I will meet you again at the end of the row. I'm coming to the end of row 1, working a single in each of the last stitches of the row, and I'm turning, and now is where the lace action actually is getting started, and we need to follow the pattern carefully. So for row 2, it tells us to chain 1 and then to work a single crochet in the first single crochet. So that starts off the row. And now we have a repetition. So the repetition says to work a single into the next single. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip 2, and then we're going to work a double crochet in the next one. So yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over, go through the first 2 and through the second 2. And then we're going to again chain 3. And then we're going to skip the next 2. And that ends the repetition. So to begin with, the next repetition, we're going to work a single into the next single. So remember, skipping 2 and then a single into the next single. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, skip 2, work a double into the next one, chain 3, and skip 2, and then a single into the next one. And here, that's the beginning of the next repetition, but I'm going to stop here to just show you that this is what it's going to look like. And that is kind of like an easy way now to memorize how these repeats are going to continue across the row, because you can see here how we work a single, we do chain 3 and skip 2, and then a double, then chain 3 and skip 2, and then again a single. So that creates these chain 3 spaces that goes up and down like this. So keep working like this across, and I'll meet you again when there are 2 stitches remaining on the row. I'm at the end of my last repetition, chaining 3, skipping 2, and I have 2 stitches left on the row, and the pattern tells us to just work a single in each one of these last 2 stitches. So single and single, and that finishes row 2, and we are ready to work row 3. So turn around and line up your stitches, and let's get started on row 3. We start with the chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then immediately starts the repetition. We're going to work a double crochet in the next single, and the next single is right here. So just put a double here, and then you're going to chain 2, and you're going to skip that chain 3 space, and in the double crochet here at the top, we're going to work single, chain 2, and single all into the same stitch. So we're working a single, we're going to chain 2, and then place a single into the same stitch like that, and then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to skip this next chain 3 space, and that ends the repetition. So begin at the beginning again with the double crochet in the next single, chain 2, skip this space, and then at the top of the next double crochet, work a single, chain 2, and a single, and then chain 2, skip that chain 3 space. So this is what this repetition is going to look like. You can see how it repeats across with these little loops and the double crochets down into the single crochets, and then a little loop on top of the double crochets. So try to memorize it or just follow the pattern carefully. So repetition starts with the double crochet in the single. You chain 2. The top of the double crochet, you work a single. You chain 2, single into the same double crochet, and then chain 2. So that's the repetition, and you keep working it across all your stitches, and I will meet you again when we are at the end of this row. I've done my last chain 2, skipping the last chain 3 space, and I'm going to place a double crochet in each of these last 2 single crochet stitches. So a double and a double. That finishes row 3, and you now have a lace texture looking like this. we are ready for row 4. Row 4 starts with the chain 1 and then single in each of the first 2 double crochets. So single and single. Then we have the repetition starting with skipping the next chain 2 space, and then in that chain 2 space on top here, we're going to work 3 trebles, chain 2 and 3 trebles. So wrap the yarn for your first treble. You wrap it twice around your hook. You're going into this chain 2 space and bring through the yarn. Then go through your first 2 loops, yarn over, go through your second 2 loops, yarn over and go through your last 2 loops. That's your first treble. Now let's make 2 more. Wrap the yarn twice around, go through the first 2, second 2 and last 2. Wrap yarns twice, still working into the same space. Go through the first 2, second 2, and the last 2. So that is 3 treble crochets, and then it says to chain 2 and work 3 trebles into the same space again. So wrap the yarn twice, go back into the same space, work treble number 1, treble number 2, and treble number 3. So that creates this little fan-shaped shell here at the top in this chain 2 space. Now the pattern tells us to skip the next chain 2 space and then work a single at the top of this double crochet. So with that, that finishes our first repetition. Now let's repeat that one more time. You skip the space and into that chain 2 space, we're going to work 3 trebles, chain 2 and 3 trebles. So we're starting with our first treble, our second treble, and our third treble. Then we're coming to the point where we're going to do a chain 2 and then 3 more trebles into the same space. So that is our first and our second. Make sure that you keep working into the same space, the chain 2 space on top of your double crochet. So there we have another shell or fan, and place a single crochet in the next double crochet. So this is what this is supposed to look like, and we're just going to continue that across. So take your time working your treble crochet stitches, and I'll meet you again at the end of the row. I'm finishing my last repetition with a single crochet in the next double crochet. And here at the end of the row, I have the chain 3 that started the previous row. So I'm going to end with a single crochet here at the top of this last stitch. So that finishes up row 4. We have a super cute little edge looking texture so far, but now we're going to turn and work row 5. So for row 5, we're starting with a chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then a double crochet in the next single. So that would be the single that we have here, and we're working a double crochet into it. And then it tells us to work chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to skip these 3 trebles and work a single up at the top of that chain 2 space. And then we're going to chain 3, and skip the next 3 trebles. And this is the repetition. So starting from the beginning again, we're doing a double crochet in the next single crochet. And then we're going to chain 3. And we're going to put a single crochet up at the top of that chain 2 space. And then we're going to chain 3. And we're going to put a double crochet down here in that single crochet. And chain 3. And a single at the top of the chain 2 space. So as you can see, this is now creating a straight edge here up at the top when we're working row 5. So keep working like that across, and I'll meet you again at the end of this row. I just made the last chain 3s in my last repetition. I'm skipping the last 3 trebles, and I have 2 singles left here at the end of the row. So just place a double crochet in each one of those single crochet stitches. So that's 1 double crochet and then a second double crochet, and that ends row 5. And we now have a texture looking like this. We are ready for row 6. So turn around, and we are now on the right side again. And we are starting with a chain 1. And then we're going to put a single crochet in each of these first 2 double crochets. So just work single and single. And then it tells us in all of these chain 3 spaces that we have across, a total of 44 chain 3 spaces, you're going to put 3 single crochets in each one of them across. So just work into the chain space 1, 2, and 3, and then skip over to the next space and just work 1, 2, and 3. Next space 1, 2, and 3. So easy as that. Just keep working 3 singles in each chain space across, and I will meet you there at the end of the row. I'm working my 3rd single here in the last space. I have 2 double crochet left. I will work a single into each one of them and put the last single into top there of those chain 3. So there we have a finished row 6, and we are ready for the very last row 7. And for row 7, we have a very mindless row ahead of us, because we're just going to work a single in each single crochet stitch across here on the wrong side. Start with the chain 1, and then just single into the first stitch, and then single in each stitch across to take us over from the wrong side to the right side. So just keep working single in each stitch across, and I'll meet you again at the end of the row. I'm working my last stitches here on row 7, coming to the very last stitch, and we're going to change to harbor. So stick your hook through, bring through the cream color, grab harbor, and put it on your hook and pull it through those last 2 loops. We can now finish off the cream color as we're going to continue working with harbor for our next stripe. So you can turn around and just enjoy the beauty of our last stripe here, stripe 19. It's all finished, and we are ready to work stripe 20. Before we continue, I'm just going to double check our gauge, because we're supposed to have a stripe measuring 2.5 inches. And we do. So we are then ready for stripe 20. That wraps up number 19, and we are ready for stripe number 20. Back in stripe number 16, we learned how to work clusters in one way. And in stripe 20, we're going to take it one step further and work our clusters a bit different to create a bubbly pebble stitch texture. With yet another different use of the stitches, it will add an extra flair that makes this stripe truly one of a kind. Next stripe is called the pebble stitch texture. So you have a row of single, you have a row of clusters, a row of singles and clusters, and they're so cute and so fun to make. So let's just get started. So I have Harbor on my hook and I'm ready to start working row 1 on the right side. And like I said, all the right side rows are just going to be single crochet in each stitch across. So very easy. Just remember to work into the very first stitch as you begin. So put a single there in the first stitch and then work single crochet in each stitch across. So do so and meet me again at the end of the row. I'm nearing the end of the row, working my last single crochet stitches here for a total of 136. It may be a good idea to just double count your stitches at this point. We are ready to work row 2, and now we're going to work those pebbles, or actually clusters, what they're called in the pattern. So you're going to chain 1 and then work a single crochet in your first stitch. Then you're going to skip the next stitch, and that is to take our stitch count actually down to a total of 135 stitches instead of the 136 we started with. Now the repetition starts with making a cluster. So look at the top of the pattern where special stitches describes a cluster. You're going to do a yarn over and then insert the hook into the stitch, yarn over, and draw up the loop. Then you're going to do this 3 times. So yarn over, go through the same stitch, and pull up a loop. Yarn over again, and go through the same stitch, and pull up a loop. And now, if we spread them out, you can see we have a total of 7 loops on our hook. I would like stretch them out a little bit to make it easier, because you're going to make a yarn over and then go through all those loops at the same time. Then the repetition says to make a single in the next stitch. And so when we do that, we work a single, we tighten that stitch a little bit when we work that single, and that's going to pop out that cluster on our right side, as we can see here now. So we're going to repeat this across, and I'll make a few more so that we can really see them popping. So yarn over, go through the stitch, bring through the yarn. Yarn over, same stitch, bring up the yarn, yarn over, same stitch a 3rd time and bring up the yarn, stretch out, yarn over, pull through all loops, and a single into the next. Tighten. So that was 2 of our clusters. We can see how they shape here on the right side of our work. And we'll just continue. Yarn over, bring up the yarn, yarn over into the same stitch, yarn over into the same stitch, 3rd time, yarn over through all loops, single crochet into the next stitch, tighten, yarn over, next stitch, bring up the loop, total of 3 times for a total of 7 loops on our hook. Yarn over, go through all 7, and then a single. So that's the repetition. We're going to keep repeating all the way across, and I'll meet you there at the end of the row. I'm coming towards the end of the row. I only have 2 more stitches, so I'm going to work my last cluster here in the 2nd to last stitch on the row, and just go in, then pull through all the loops, and then place a single crochet here in the very last stitch. So that finishes off row 2, and ta-da! It's fun to turn to the right side and see all those pebble clusters all across the row. And now again, for row 3, we're just going to work single crochet across. So I'm just going to show you that all these stitches, no matter if it's a single crochet or a cluster, they have these 2 loops at the top of each stitch. So make sure to go into every stitch when you work your single crochets across. So working into the clusters and working into the single crochets. So work your singles across, and I'll meet you again at the end of the row. I'm nearing the end of row 3, working my last single crochets here, the end of the row. So that finishes row 3. And now we have one more row to work on our pebble texture for this project. We are on a wrong side row, and again we're going to work clusters. Now we're going to offset them a little bit, so we're not repeating row 2, but it's going to be very similar. So chain 1 and then work a single in each of the first 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And then work a cluster into the next single crochet. So we're wrapping the yarn around the hook, going into the next stitch, and we'll do that 3 times. And then yarn over and go through all 7 loops, and then single crochet into the next stitch. So as you can see now, that cluster came a little offset to the 2 clusters on the row below. So that's what we're going to keep working now across for this row. We're going to repeat in the brackets. We did a single into the next stitch, which starts the next repetition. So now next up is a cluster in the next stitch. 2 and 3, and yarn over and go through all 7 loops, then single into next, and so on. So keep repeating across, and I'll meet you again at the end of the row. I just worked my last cluster in the last repetition, and I have 2 more stitches here on my row. So I'll work a single into the next one, and then to increase the stitches, I'm going to work 2 singles in the last single. And while I'm doing that, in the very last one of them, I'm going to change color. So I'll bring in the cappuccino, wrap it around my hook, and pull through those last 2 loops. I'm going to fasten off harbor, and that finishes row 4. We're going to turn around to the right side to see our clusters. The pebble texture is finished, and I'll bring in my tape measure again, and I'll make sure that we are on 1 inch, and we are. So with that, we have finished stripe 20, and we are ready to move on to work stripe 21. So that was stripe number 20. Next up, we're going to work a graphic texture in stripe number 21. In stripe 21, we're going to learn a new texture that I have called the graphic texture. I promise you, it's easy, but we will for sure learn a new technique with this one today. Let me show you. Next up, I'm going to guide you through this beautiful graphic texture. We're going to be working 2 rows from the right side, and then a row from the wrong side, and then 3 rows from the right side, and end with a row on the wrong side. We're going to change colors, and we're going to put colors on hold and have a lot of fun and interesting new techniques. So let's get started. I have cappuccino on my hook, and I'm on the right side, and I'm ready to start working row 1. So it's a fairly easy row, as we're actually just going to work double crochets in each stitch across. So the first 3 chains represent my first double crochet, and then I will just place a double crochet in each stitch across. So work this row and meet me at the end of it. I'm coming to the end of row 1, and I'm working my last double crochets here in the last stitches. And now, when we are at the very end here, you can pull out the loop a little bit long, and then grab one of your stitch markers and just put it in the loop to secure, because now we're going to let this loop rest while we're working our next row. So just leave it out here, go back to the beginning of the row to work your row 2. And for row 2, we're going to work with seafoam. So as row 2 says, insert your hook in top of those beginning chain 3. So put the hook through the 3rd chain, and then with seafoam, put a yarn over on your hook and pull it through. Now, when you have the loop here on your hook, you're going to chain 1, and then you're going to work a single crochet into this same stitch. So go into the same 3rd chain and work your first single crochet. Then starts a repetition. We're going to chain 2. We're going to skip the next 2 double crochets and then place a single crochet into the next double. So that's what we did right there, and now we're going to repeat this across. Chain 2, skip 2, and single into the next one. Chain 2, skip 2, single into the next one. So you're going to create these chain spaces and keep working like this across, and I'll meet you again at the end of this row 2. I'm doing my last repetition, so I'm chaining 2, skipping 2, and then I'll place a single crochet here in the very last stitch. At this point, I'm going to fasten off seafoam. So just cut the tail and then pull that out through the stitch. Then we're going to turn work around so that we can work row 3 from the wrong side. And now I'm going to show you what we're going to do here now, because the pattern tells us to insert the hook here in top of our first single crochet. Then we're going to take this loop that we have rested, and we're going to remove the stitch marker from the loop, and then put the loop on the hook, tighten, and then pull that loop through our stitch so that we now can continue working with cappuccino. And it says not to pull it too tight because we don't want it to cinch together here too tight between the rows. Now we're going to start with the chain 3, and then we have a repetition starting in the brackets that tells us to work 3 double crochets in this next chain 2 space. So we're just going to start with that, working 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to chain 1, and we're going to skip that single crochet. And this is now the repetition across. 3 double crochets in the chain 2 space, chain 1 and skip the single, 3 double in the next one, and so on. So follow me here now. We're doing 1, 2, and 3 double crochets, chain 1, skip, then 3 in next one, and so on. So keep working like this across, and then I'll meet you again at the end of this row. I'm working 3 double crochets also in my very last chain space, like this. And then we have 1 single crochet here at the end of the row. So you'll place 1 more double crochet here in that last single crochet. And then again, we're pulling out the loop a little bit to rest. Place your stitch marker to make sure you have the stitch secure. And then we'll turn around so that we are ready to work our next row from right side. So we are ready to work row 4, and now we will be working with the color Spa. So take your hook, insert the hook in the top of that double crochet here at the beginning of our row. We're going to do a yarn over and pull up a loop with the color Spa. And now with the Spa on our hook, we're going to chain 1, do a single crochet in the same stitch, and then start our repetition where we're going to chain 2, and then skip these next 3 double crochets and place a single crochet in the next chain space. So that's what that's going to look like. and we're going to chain 2, skip, and go into the next chain space and work a single. Chain 2, skip, and single into next space. So just repeat that all across, and I'll meet you again at the end of this row. So I have repeated across, and I have 4 last double crochets on the row here. I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to skip these 3, and I'm going to place my next single crochet here in the top of the beginning chain 3 that we had here at the beginning of previous row. So I'm going to place a single here at the end, and that is the last thing I'm doing here with the spa color. So I'm just fastening off, just pulling that one out, and without turning, I'll just go back here now to beginning of the row here again. And for row 5, we're going to insert the hook in top of this first single crochet we made with the spa collar. I will take the loop with cappuccino, remove the stitch marker, put the loop on my hook, tighten, and so that I can pull the cappuccino through. So now I'm ready to work row 5. Make sure you grab your working yarn. That should be the cappuccino color. And now we're starting with the chain 3. And then first up, we have this chain 2 space coming up, and we're going to put 3 double crochets in the next chain 2 space, just like we did on the previous row with cappuccino. We're going to work exactly the same way, placing 3 doubles in each of these chain spaces. We're going to chain 1, skip the single, and then 3 double in the next chain space. So you should be familiar with how to work this row. After I finish these 3, we'll take a look. So you can see here now, we're repeating here now exactly what we did back here when we worked row 3. So keep repeating this across, and I'll meet you again at the end of the row. I'm working 3 double crochets here at the end of the row in the last chain space. I'm grabbing the tail here, the collar here, so it doesn't start unravel. So here I am now at the end of the row, and I'm placing a double crochet into this last single crochet at the end of the row. And again, I'm going to let cappuccino rest, so I'm going to pull it out, grab the stitch marker again to secure, and again, I'm not going to turn the row. I'm just going to move myself back to the beginning of the row again. I'm going to grab Harbor for row 6. So for row 6, you insert hook in the top of the beginning chain 3, grab Harbor, pull up a loop, and then chain 1, and work a single crochet into this same stitch. And now we're going to work a row exactly like we worked here with the previous color, and here when we worked also these contrasting colors with chain spaces. So again, we know what we're going to do. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 3, work a single into that space. Chain 2, single into next space. So that's a familiar row. You're just going to repeat that across, and I'll meet you again the end of the row when we are ready for our last row. Here I am at the end of the row. I still have these 4 double crochet left on the row, so I'll chain 2, skip the first 3, and I'm putting a single crochet in the very last one. And that's all for Harbor. We'll fasten off Harbor and pull it through. And now we're turning to work the last row on wrong side. So let's make sure we have our yarn here in control. We'll move all these tails out of the way. We're going to put the hook through the first stitch. We're going to remove the stitch marker from cappuccino, put cappuccino back on the hook and tighten. I pull cappuccino through the stitch, and then make sure we have the working yarn in order. over here, and we're going to start row 7 with chain 3 here in the first stitch. So chain 3 and then 2 double crochets here in the first space. So this is to get our stitch count correct. We're working 2 double crochet in the first space, and then we're going to work 3 double crochets in each of the following chain 2 spaces across. So 3 here in the next one, and in each one of the following spaces across. So continue like this, and I'll meet you again at the end of this row. So 3 double crochets also in the very last space. So 2 and 3, and then we have one more stitch to finish and work a double crochet into that single crochet, and that finishes row 7. We can fasten off cappuccino, pull it out and turn it around. Here, voila, we have stripe 21 finished. I'll double check the measure. It's supposed to be 2 3/4. And it looks like we are pretty good on spot there. And so that completes this graphic textured stripe. With stripes 19, 20, and 21, you learned exciting new ways to arrange your crochet stitches, as well as making cute pebble stitches to add a bubbly texture. They all added completely different looks and textures to our growing collection of stripes. I look forward to seeing you in about a month in our next installment of the Annie's Crochet Stripe Afghan Club, where we will make stripes 22, 23, and 24. You will learn how to work linked stitches, a version of V-stitches, as well as getting to know how to do color work, as we will be working a pattern using 2 colors at the same time. So much to look forward to. Until next time, happy crocheting!